Today is our lesson number 7, Cinematography, and we will talk about director of photography, of course, camera department in general, light department, grip department, and we will talk about essential terms like professional words, phrases, and so on. And before we start this huge topic of cinematography and especially the device that we use to make films, to shoot videos, camera, so we need to travel a little back to the past and refresh what we know actually about the camera. We already traveled with you back in history, in film history, but we didn't really talk about the camera evolution. So that's what we need to start with, so that to understand and to have this idea of what camera is from technical point of view and from artistic point of view and actually from psychological point of view as well. So does anyone know anything about the origins of camera or origins of image? Like, what was this first human idea or goal with producing the image, interaction with image? We need to travel like really back to the past. So, any ideas? When human beings decided to interact with image first, when they had this desire of producing the image. So Anton has a suggestion. Caveman writing. So caves with fire, shadows. Yeah, this is going to be like Chinese shadow theater many centuries later. Okay. So let's start with cave paintings. Why do you think people back then decided to have these images on cave walls? So what was this idea behind? Why did they need to have this image? They had no other entertainment. They didn't have TV, yeah, so okay, their life was boring. To pass the information, to tell the story. Okay. Decoration, so production design for caves. Okay. So anything can be combined. Yeah. So of course, well, I guess the initial point was to pass the information, to tell the story with the images, because back then they didn't have words, they didn't have any alphabet or something. So first is the image. To keep memory what to do to kill animals. Yeah, so anyway, that was the mechanism of, in a way, to store memory, to store knowledge, to, in a way, reflect the world that they saw, so that to have some artifacts. So, cave paintings, of course. Then we need to move a little bit more to such effect as camera obscura. So have you ever heard about camera obscura and its effect? Because it became the essential one for camera development, for camera evolution, like how we know camera nowadays. Maybe some of you know Latin, therefore you can a little bit guess the meaning behind camera obscura. Coffee bar with this name. So maybe there are some interesting decorations in this coffee bar, because hopefully these people implemented some great idea behind the name of this coffee bar. Maybe this coffee bar is quite dark. So, no one heard about camera obscura. Maybe heard about the dark room or darkened room. Since in a way caves, they were already some kind of camera obscuras, but they needed to have some kind of light coming from outside. So then it could really have been like a typical traditional camera obscura. Actually, we all, like human beings, have this camera obscura presented in our body with our eyes. So our eyes are this cameras obscura. Because if we compare how our eyes work and how camera works, it's almost the same. But with one interesting, well, not one, but we still have different ideas behind camera and like how camera works, how it has to work so that to have the same functions as we have with our eyes. But do you know that actually the way our eyes see the world, so actually we see inverted images. So we see the image, but actually it is projected to the back of our eyes, inverted, but then our brain flips the image and it becomes normal. Yeah. So if you look at the slide, this is how human eye works in picture 1. So we see a person. So the light goes through the human eye. We also have something like lens. And then through this lens, light travels to the back of our retina. And the image actually is upside down. But then, with the help of our brain, some optic nerve, it flips the image again, and so we see the world the normal way. The same way works camera obscura in picture number 2. So if you have some object and then you want to see this object in camera obscura, so you build this dark box and you have like a small pinhole through which the light travels inside, but when it travels inside, the image becomes upside down. This principle was used, of course, for the first cameras, but so that not to be upside down to yourself as a cinematographer, special mirrors were used in cameras, were put in cameras, so that to reflect the image, and it becomes the normal way as well. So that's how cameras were constructed. Because when inventors found out this effect of upside down image, so they actually, with the first photographers, it was okay. So they knew that the image was upside down when they tried to print it on special plates. But like with already with normal cameras capturing the image, moving images, it was problematic because you couldn't really see this image always upside down, so you had to do something so that not to see this image upside down. So that's how the mirror was introduced into the camera, so that, and you can see how it works in picture number 3. And if we speak about how this camera obscure effect was implemented and evolution during the history time. So cave paintings around 500 before Christ. So different distorted images or images, vague images of animals. Then they started to notice these reverted images projected in some dark spaces. So they started to call this effect as camera obscura, from Latin darkroom or pinhole image. And the first written evidence of this effect was done by Chinese philosopher Mozi around 417. And that is the earliest record of the camera obscura effect. Then another philosopher, Aristotle, so he also was questioning this effect and tried to connect it with the work of human eye. And then Leonardo da Vinci, in his Codex Atlanticus, where he gathered all the possible knowledge of everything, how it works in the world. In 1502, he wrote a description of camera obscura and human vision. So he connected it finally. And then this knowledge was used to make and to construct the first cameras. So, did you know about this common things with human eyes and camera, and this flipped image in human eye and cameras, and this camera obscura effect? Have you ever noticed it? Or it's something that you hear for the first time? Yeah, in school. They actually teach you this information at school, but maybe you don't really pay attention to it because in practice you never really concentrate on it, or you don't really meet it, I don't know, during your studies or your some professional work. So, and when you have this effect, so at least you try to, in a way, projecting the image, how to see this projection. But then you need to actually try to capture the image. And then starting from 1830s, people start to invent different types of devices so that to see the images move. So they invent stroboscope, phenakistoscope, zoetrope, zooprixiscope, and so on and so forth. So different types of scopes. So they try to. So these devices were mostly famous for animating pictures, so that to see the pictures move. The next stage was the horse in motion by Edward Muybridge. So you know about this guy. So that was the next step. Like not only to the idea was to capture the image and then project it, but not only the projection. And another person, we didn't really talk about this man, but he invented the chronophotographic gun. His name was Etienne Jules Marais, and his photographic gun could make 12 consecutive frames per second in 1882. So because his gun was shooting frames, so probably shooting films, this expression originated from this chronophotographic gun. So it looked like a rifle with this magazine with films, and so like when pressing the button, so it could shoot the frames but not shooting people. So that was really nice invention and quite artistic one for such a thing as gun. I'm going to show you how all of these scopes devices looked like, so that I guess maybe you've seen these devices somewhere, like at film museums or somewhere else, but I guess you're more or less familiar with them.
Trope. We have all seen the round card with a bird on one side and a cage on the other. Spin the card and the two sides seem to magically combine, placing the bird in her cage. This elegant toy was invented around 1824 and demonstrated beautifully that an image will linger momentarily in the eye. The persistence of vision principle is at the center of film and animation, and is the reason we are able to perceive the illusion of movement from a series of sequential images. This replica includes 10 gorgeously printed reproductions on thick textured round cards, all housed in a handsome wooden box. The phenakistoscope was the first device to demonstrate the illusion of animation. Invented by Belgian physicist Joseph Plateau in 1832, the phenakistoscope was so revolutionary that it was seen by some as witchcraft. A slitted disc with sequential images mounted on a handle. Spin the disc, and nothing unexpected happened. But if the spinning disc is viewed in a mirror, the images burst into life. Viewing the disc's reflection through its slits breaks up the blur of color into a series of sequential images, creating the illusion of motion. This replica includes the 12 original discs manufactured by Plateau, housed in a nice box set with a solid hardwood and brass handle. The zoetrope, likely the best-known early animation device, was invented in 1834. The device consists of a slitted drum containing animation strips that spin on a wooden stand. By viewing the spinning animation through slits in the drum, the blur of color is broken into a rapid succession of sequential images, producing the illusion of motion. The zoetrope was an improvement over the phenakistoscope because it could be viewed by a group of people situated around the drum. This fine zoetrope replica is handcrafted with a solid wood stand and brass drum, and includes 34 mostly historical animation sequences with a few modern examples. The praxinoscope, invented in 1877, was the successor to the zoetrope. The praxinoscope replaces the zoetrope slits with angled mirrors placed in the center of the drum. Viewing the spinning animation reflecting off these circularly arranged mirrors breaks up the blur of color into an animation sequence. Viewing the images off mirrors rather than through small slits provided a
So this was the presentation of such devices, and so my question is, have you ever seen such devices? Because it was the first way to project the image so that to see it moving. Okay. So just don't focus on different names, so you can of course find more names. Maybe like when you were a child, so these were some children toys, so that you see something and you see this illusion of moving image, but in a way, so the image didn't really move. There was a special device that made this image to move. So what was the idea behind all of these magic toys? Because we're still progressing with cave paintings, because Well, there was evolution, there was progress. So, but what was the main idea behind this projection of moving images? What do you think? To make it alive, of course, to see the movement. Yeah, but as you can see, so it was the repetition, and it was not really some kind of story behind it. It was just, for example, dancing or some sports activity. Yeah, so that was mostly like an illusion. But back then, for the beginning and like the second half of 19th century, that was quite innovative. That was something new, and of course, it was a great illusion. And if you notice that, because it created this illusion of still picture but moving, it was considered like a witchcraft. So some people didn't like it. So they thought that it was some kind of like devil creation or something like that. So you saw that different types of scope devices, they had this time limit of image projection. So there was just only one sort of movement or one story that could be projected. Now I'm going to show you some advanced technology. In this video there is no special effects, no visual effects, but I think as long as you can be creative, so you can do anything and you can create like the second life for such devices. It's going to be like 3 minutes video, but I just want you to remember such devices and to see how they can progress.
You say, where are we going? I guess there's just no way of knowing. But we've got time. Yeah, we got time. We got time. Roses on the water, thrown for somebody's son or daughter. But we got time. Yeah, we got time. We got time.
So what do you think about this sort of new technology implemented? Okay, nice video. Yeah, but just you can be a little bit charmed, enchanted by this effect, but there is no special effect. You just use they use like zoetrope. I mean, like with mirrors mostly, and there were cuts, of course, between the shots. But anyway, so you don't need anything special. You just need to think and to be creative. If you're interested how this video was produced, like how it was shot, so there is a video on YouTube as well. Yeah, like I'll leave you the link to this video, and then you can see how they shot the video, because when it was published, so that was a revolution. That was such a high to high to film history and to this camera devices evolution as well. So on the one hand, people tried to project the image, they tried to capture the image, and then of course we start with the history of film history, and the guys that we talked about during our introduction lesson, with Louis Le Prince, with Lumiere brothers, and so on and so forth. So then you can get into this film history part. But while we were talking about film history, we didn't really touch the topic about the color, since color was something quite desirable during the early film production, but unfortunately, for the first 20-30 years, all the films were black and white, because it was quite complex to produce color in film. And as for example with such devices as zoetropes or stroboscopes, so these devices were colorful, so the images were colored, and so the projection was all in colors. But with film, so the film lacked these characteristics. Do you have any suggestions? So when was the first, let's say, colored film produced? Not color film, but colored film. Because it's very important. We need to distinguish between colored film and color film. So if we think about something like the birth of cinema, 1895, with Lumiere brothers, so when everything started, Disney cartoons. Yeah, we speak about animation. No, Disney is too far away. So of course, inventors, they try to experiment with color, because, like as you just have seen, so color was presented in these projection devices. The idea was how to put this color into film, early films. That was Wizard of Oz was like the peak of image in full its color and sound connected together. But the first attempts, not so colorful, but still some colors presented. Okay, I'm not going to torture you anymore. So first films were monochrome, but the only way to add color to them was like to do it manually. And one of the variants was to tint manually the frames, like all the frames. So therefore, if colored, then machine or hand. So it was manually colored. That's why they were not color films. So color films, it's when it's like the technological process already happening, like within filmmaking process. And actually, the first colored film was Annabelle Serpentine Dance, which was produced sort of with Thomas Edison help back in 1895. I'm going to show you this short video so that you see like how color looked like back then. So this is how color looked like back then. So it was manually colored from frame to frame, and you can see that, of course, it really looks artificial, not natural at all. So, but still, it was already 1895. It was during some exposition which took place in one of the states of America, but it was not something like grandiose. But then in 1902, Edward Turner, and actually this last name of Turner should be recognizable because you can see his name in opening credits of film or final credits of film, because if we see films of back then, like the beginning of 20th century, 1910s, so you can see his name. So he tried to produce films in natural color, and he called this process kinemacolor. And the first natural color film was produced in 1908. It was called A Visit to the Seaside. So let's see how it looked. So that was called natural color, and sort of it looked okay, especially when some object really had to be green or red. But so he tried to balance between red, green, and blue. So this is how it started. But because still this process was quite expensive, and there were no many special devices which could produce such types of films, film strips, and then to process them. So they had to wait until the first version of Technicolor was introduced, and so Technicolor actually comes from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, so that's why tech, so it's connected with MIT. So where Herbert Kalmus and Daniel Comstock, they studied, and then they become instructors. So they experimented more, and Technicolor, or so the film was produced with the help of Technicolor. So this name, this title, I guess, is already much more known to you. Then in 1935, Kodachrome was introduced. Like Kodak was probably the major company producing film stocks and everything. And then it was Eastman color in 1950s, which was quite dominant until the end of 20s. So until digital cinematography came. And then we had more opportunities with color and experiments more. So this was the brief history of color in film. I guess maybe some names are known to you. So have you heard about Technicolor, Kodachrome? So of course, if you experiment with film photography, so still some film stock is produced by Kodak, Eastman, Well, I guess you know Kodak. Kodak is the most famous producer of film stocks. So these were technical aspects of how camera was developing from the early ages until the sort of 20th century, where it really started to be used and started to be implemented in practice in filmmaking process. And we're about to go to the person who is in charge of all of these camera devices and camera accessories. So we are about to start talking about the director of photography. And it's interesting to know that at the very beginning, film director and director of photography, it was usually one person. Because, well, film director had to look into the camera so that to see what's in the frame. And then he or she was responsible for like filming the scene and telling actors what to do. So at the very beginning, it was one profession. I mean, it was one person doing this job on the film set. But since the camera was developing and progressing, and it was not only about just the camera, it was about different devices, accessories, and especially light, because people wanted to shoot films inside, but since there was not so much light, and it was the problem for then film to be processed and actually to see some image on the film. So then it had to be more people introduced, and it was much better to separate film director from director of photography. But even now, sometimes people don't really understand if it's possible, if it's better when a film director is one person and director of photography is another person. Or how actually one person can combine being a film director, a director of photography, and sometimes even like the main actor. But anyway, so it can happen. And if we take a look at the description of this profession, so we can call director of photography a cinematographer, and we can use the short forms like DOP or DP, but I guess usually we just say DP. But if we again go back to Oscar nominations, so do you remember what's the nomination for this profession there? How do we pronounce it? Have you ever paid attention? Do we say best director of photography? Ooh. No, art director is another person. Cinematography. Best cinematography. Yeah, so that's how we call this this nomination for director of photography. So, and don't mix or don't think that it's just two different people. No, it's just one person. So, director of photography is a key to camera department and light department and grip department. And usually director of photography is approved by director, of course, producers, studio, and all these people in charge. Director of photography works closely with the director and production designer or art director, as Bharat mentioned here. So, and the main responsibility is to put the words into images, to transfer them to make them technically represented in the film, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, to have this visual style. So, after reading the screenplay, when director of photography reads the screenplay, then they start talking with the director about how they are going to transfer the words into images. So they do it together. They can spend hours, days, and I don't know how much time discussing how to make this visual look of the film. So they make different researches, they're trying to understand what's the mood of the film, what's the atmosphere of the film. And while they're discussing it, it's not only about just film director telling what he or she wants. It has to be the collaboration. And in ideal situation, it's two creative people talking about creative work and proposing different ideas, suggestions, what's the best way to make this film from mostly like visual point of view. Because technical point of view depends, of course, on the budget that they have, because, well, different cameras and different its accessories and light and so on, so they have different budget. But even if this budget is not so big, you still can have great visual style. It depends on artistic style of every person in this team, director and director of photography, and how they feel and how they see this world and how they can transfer images into emotions and so on. So it's on the one hand, of course, it depends on their background and experience, but I think it's mostly connected with just life experience and how to transfer the emotions. And so that's where maybe it's sometimes even better to have a more sensitive person, a person with a more artistic vision than technical background. But if this person can have a technical and artistic background, so and vision of this world, that's a jackpot, I guess. Because of course, director of photography prepares a list of required equipment, so he or she needs to know what's there in this pool of equipment, what we should choose, what's the best one, including lights, film store, camera, cranes, accessories, and so on and so forth. And during the production, so director of photography tests lenses, filters, checks the results, and sees and supervises so that director's vision works for the film, so they're on the right track. So that's the introduction to description of director of photography role in the whole filmmaking process, especially during the pre-production stage. So I have here some students who worked or still working as cinematographers, or maybe they are connected to camera department. So what are your feelings about this technical aspect of cinematographer and artistic? So how do you feel about these two key skills connected together? Or maybe you can already see or sort of understand which is more difficult to acquire. What is more difficult to learn? The technical aspect of cinematography or the artistic one? Can you actually learn the artistic aspect of cinematography? artistic creative skills are hard to learn. I mean, you can learn how to operate the camera. That's, I think it's easy. I mean, it's easier. But how to make this scene atmospheric, how to create this special mood, that's something that goes beyond the technical skills. But just keep in mind everything that we've already discussed about cave paintings, about the main idea of why people have these images, why do they need to project them, and everything. So, because it's all connected. It's just the different technical devices, but the idea is the same. So, well, that's true. You don't need to spend a lot of time to know how to turn on and turn off the camera. But with light, it's a little bit more complicated, but so we will get there. So, when film director and director of photography start talking, they start to work with the script so that to see how they're going to visualize the script. We need to go through these techniques that they go through, and especially the images that they would require so that to have actual images or shots. Here we need to get introduced to different types of shots, and because that's what you see during the film, so that's the sequences of different shots. And my short introduction to shots, usually we connect different types of shots according to the person's body. So the more we see, so the bigger the shot is, so the less we see of a human body, so the smaller shot is. But it's just the rough description. So if you look at this slide, so you can see that if we have like all the body in our shot visible, so it is called full shot. If we see just half of the body, then it's a medium shot. If we see usually just only a face, so it's a close-up. And if we see only eyes, so this is the close-up. So this is like the main division. Of course, between all of these shots, you can have some kind of average shots, and then they have a little bit more creative description. For example, if you see a person from knee and all the way up, so then it's medium full shot. Then you can have a little bit upper shot that is called cowboy shot, and it comes from the history, from Western genre. So when they had to show the gun in holster, so then it was the cowboy shot created. And so if you see a person from chest and higher up, then it's medium close-up. But just keep in mind that if you see the full body, then it's full shot. If just the half of the body, medium shot, face close-up, and eyes just extreme close-up. So it can be also about extreme close-up of a detail when you see like a very big detail on the screen. But we have the technical aspect of these different types of shots, but we also need to think about what we want to say when we have these different types of shots. So which emotion, which like subtext or message we want to send to our audience when we choose this or that type of shot. Because when we are framing, we need to think and we need to go with the emotions first, because our audience come and see our film to experience emotions. And this technical aspect is always in the background. It's just behind. We don't really pay attention to it. We just use the technical aspect so that to produce the artistic one. When I'm going to show you the next slides with different types of shots, I want you to write your emotions. So what you feel, what you think when you see this or that type of shot. Okay? We are going to experiment. If the ideology behind the types of shot really work for you, as it was invented many years ago. Okay, so you see the slide with this or that type of shot, and you see the image, and you try to say what comes first to you when you see this picture, this shot. Okay, you're going to see a little bit more types of shots, but so that to learn more. So it is called like extreme wide shot when you see something in a distance. It's of course bigger than the long shot, because of course you can see whole body of people, but they will be quite in a distance. So when you see this kind amount of location presented, so what do you, yeah, that's Mad Max, Fury Road. So what emotions do you have? So what do you start thinking about? Great movie. You don't have to think about the movie. I want you to concentrate on the shot. So you see this information coming from the image. You can be poetic. Okay. Is it more about the person, or is it more about the environment? About the distance, I don't know. So because the more body you see, then the more it becomes about this body in the picture, in the frame. Global view. Okay. Good. So it's not only about the person, it's about the person and the location and the environment. And we can absorb more information from the environment. We can see the sort of setup, the distance, what's going on. And so this is sort of like the even establishing shot. So we see the place, the whole place. Anthony's danger. Okay. So, but also we see the scale. Here we see even the scale of emptiness. we can see the scale of danger. So if you want to have like a bigger scale of environment around you, so you need to have this extreme wide shot or extreme even establishing shot. If we get a little bit closer, so and it becomes just wide shot, we can see the whole body. I mean, doesn't matter if the body sits, lies, or stands, it doesn't matter. But still, we can see the whole body, and we still can see some kind of environment. It's not so big anymore, but so what emotions can you experience here? Now you can compare to the previous shot, and you have this one. Just don't give me comments about the Martian film. It's not about the film, it's just about the frame. More details of close environment. Yeah, we actually start seeing more details, maybe because it's important to us and we want our audience to notice these details. We're getting closer to hero. Yes. So the closer we are to the body in the frame, to the character, so it's like we're getting closer to an unknown person. So the closer we get to the unknown person, the more we start knowing about this person. We're getting more connected to the world of the character. Yeah. So it's the emotional contact. The creators, director and director of photography, are establishing, building, creating the contact between the audience and the character. And this is the most important. If the audience doesn't feel connection to the character, it's bad. If there is no connection, there are no emotions. So the audience will not laugh with the character or at the character, will not be sad as the character. So there is no connection. The next one, full shot. So we see the body. So what is the main accent of this shot? What's the relation between the character and the environment? Is it the same one as in the previous shots? Or how do we shift our attention? Where do we shift our attention as the audience? Feels natural. As we are standing somewhere nearby. Body language, characters, we already can see the character. We're getting even closer. Details, so that's the first impression, can be, so we can identify the character. Yeah, like for example, in the previous one, it's still a little bit not really identified. Well, even if, for example, the character was like facing us, we wouldn't be able to see too much. So it's still some distance. Okay, but we're getting closer. And depending what type of emotions this character experiences, so the same way we are going to be connected to this character, and of course it depends on the scene. The next one, medium wide shot, or in a way it's cowboy shot. So we're slicing a little bit the body, chopping off the legs, but it's okay. They still exist. So what's going on with this type of shot? So don't forget that we still have environment, but when we get closer to the body, so we see less of environment. Because director and director of photography try to balance between how to show the environment, how to balance between all of this information given to you, maybe you don't really need to see the environment in all of the shots, but just once introduced to it, and then keep it in mind. So this code is it's called sort of like passive memory or intellectual editing. So when you once showed the establishing shot, the environmental shot, then your brain remembers that this is the setup, and this is like mind trick. We're getting closer to face because we're starting getting interested more in face. So we need to meet the person, get closer. So that's the medium shot, or it can be also medium close-up shot. You can still see some environment, but if I see only the medium shot of the character, so where do I look first? Do I look at the environment, or do I look at the person, at the character? I hope that you're looking at the character, not the environment. Because the main idea of this shot is just to get closer to the character. And as soon as you see character's eyes close enough, that's the moment of like real introduction of character to the audience. And it should happen like really fast, because the longer you try not to have this close-ups or middle shots, your audience will not get connected to the character. You need to introduce close-up of your character. You need to see the eyes. When you make this eyes contact with the character, that's the starting point when the audience starts to feel connected to the character. Eye contact matters, and it's best way to introduce to have a close-up. So when you usually have close-up, you cannot really see the background because of different lenses and focus. So when you have close-up, it's more about the foreground, it's more about the character and his or her face, eyes. We are mostly interested in eyes. So here, of course, we already feel connected. That's extreme close-up. So how do you change your emotions from like just close-up to extreme close-up? So what's the intention when director and director of photography decide to introduce extreme close-up? Or it's called sometimes detail, if I need like a very extreme close-up of a detail. Of course, the emotions are different between these two characters. But when you have extreme close-up, usually don't see environment anymore. So you can have this like passive information about the background if you were introduced to it before, and you usually are introduced to this before. But when you have close-up, it's only about the character. It's only about its inner state, its inner world, conditions, emotions, and we're like really connected. So we cannot even look aside because we're just magnified. So close-ups are the most intensive types of shots, so that for audience to experience the emotions. So when something really tense going on in a movie, just notice that it's all about close-ups. Close-ups or extreme close-ups. When two characters are talking, so the more intensive the talking is, the more emotions they're going to reveal, so the closer director of photography will get to the character. And when it is something important that is revealed. If it's not something important, so then they just will back up to medium shots or even like long shots or even like establishing shots, so that just to show the environment. But when it is something important, then it's about close-up. But you cannot really do with close-ups and extreme close-ups all the time in your film, because then your audience will be emotionally exhausted. That's why we have different types of shots, so that to play with the audience, so that to introduce different types of feelings and emotions to the audience, so that so that audience can relax for a little bit and then experience some intense emotion, and so on and so forth. Or you can have like a detail, for example. So it is also extreme close-up, but it reveals, so there is some human body part, but it's not about the eyes, for example. So that's something different. So that's about the types of shots, which like the basic that you need to know. And every time you watch a film now, so try to identify which types of shots so creators used, so that to give you this emotion. But like, I guess 99% it will be about close-ups and extreme close-ups, if they want you to really experience this emotion. Also, when we talk about different types of shots, it's about the number of characters in the shot. So when we have one character, it is called single shot, because there is one single character in the shot. It can be two shot when we have two people in the shot. So everything is according to the number. We can have three shot when we have three people in the shot, and so on and so forth. So it's just some additional information that will be used for director and director of photography when they do the storyboard, when they do some technical shooting, information given to other departments. So it's not about just full shot, medium shot, but it will be like full shot, single shot. And people need to understand how to read these abbreviations and how to understand this professional vocabulary. Besides the characters and types of shots, we can also have different types of focus. So, because focus also gives us the information what we should pay attention to. Because when something is in focus, so we are focused on this detail or character or something else. When it is out of focus, so it means that director and director of photography don't want us to be focused on it. So on this slide you can see that there is the sort of shallow focus or shallow depth of focus. So shallow, it means that some part of the frame is in focus, like usually it's foreground, and here in the foreground you can see two characters talking. So it's too short. but the background is out of focus, so it means that it is shallow focus. So we don't really need to know what's in the background, but we can understand that if they're sitting and drinking something, so probably it's some kind of bar or club. So if we speak about the type of shot, like how much body we see, so how would you identify this type of shot? Because people are sitting, so how much body we see? Mostly we concentrated on faces, of course, like the upper body. Two shot means that there are two people in the frame. That's true. But if it's like a full shot, a medium shot, close up, extreme close up, so depending how much body we see. So which type of shot? This one. Yeah, it's medium. I can see knees. Yeah, so it's usually, it should be medium. Because I see sort of like half of the body. It doesn't matter if the person sits or not, or doesn't, so. Okay. And if I can see everything in the frame, like the background, so it is called deep focus. So here in this shot you can see foreground and you can see background. Everything is in focus. So now you tell me why everything is in focus. So what film director and director of photography want to tell us? Where do they want us to pay attention to? Reactions of Chihiro, yeah, and the film is 12 Angry Men. It's quite a camera movie, so one place, sort of one time, and there are 12 characters sitting around the table, so it's not really about the background, but the background, the place was introduced. So we mostly need all the faces to be in focus, because we need to see how they feel and how they think, and we can see it reflected on their faces, because it's about making decision. Have you seen 12 Angry Men? It of course can add more information to why do I need to see, to observe all of these faces. Okay, so if not speaking about the focus, so tell me how many characters I see in the frame, so how many sort of, is it two single, or is it single shot, two shot, three shot, or something else, and how much of a body I see, so what type of shot this one is. If you're counting all the men, so that to identify the number of characters, that's nice. Yeah, but they usually group shot. Yes, that's right. That's a group shot. Okay. And the type shot according to the part of the body scene. Because now you're just learning how to describe the shot from a professional point of view. Like, for example, full shot. That was a nice guess. So full shot, single shot, shallow focus. I've just told you the characteristics, but you already know, you already imagine how this shot would look like. On the one hand, it's from the technical point of view. From the artistic point of view, why? Which emotions do I expect the audience to feel? So, okay, moving on. This is medium shot. And another technical aspect that we need to know, so that to give a more detailed description of every shot, is the angle. So angle is the eye line that we have. So eye line is the standard line how we observe this world usually, how we see all the objects in this world. It's like the horizon in a way. But something can be changed according to the angle. So how we look at the objects, or how objects or characters look at us. And you can experience it especially when you see it at a cinema theater, because well, the screen is a little bit higher than you are, but still, so it has to be the same perception. So if I look at the character at the eye level, so it means that it's eye level angle. So when I look at the character at the eye level angle, how can I describe it psychologically? Am I higher, lower the character at the same stage as he or she is? Emotions, dominant, not dominant, subordinate, equal? Eye level feels natural. Everything feels natural. So anyway, if it's the eye level, it means equality. So it means the equality towards this character. So it's the same level. If it's a low angle, when character is presented at a higher position, so how do you feel now when Darth Vader looks at you from above? How does it make you feel? And how does it make feel the character? Because at this very moment, so don't forget, we always identify ourselves, the audience, with the main character. He's the master. Okay, you know the background story. But if, for example, even if like in real life, there is a person who is like higher than you are, yeah, so more dominant, more powerful, maybe physically, maybe according to its position in society or at work, it doesn't matter. But this is how you can express it without telling you that, look, I'm standing here like much higher than you are, so you need to feel subordinate next to me. No, you do it with the frames, you do it with this magic of camera shots. So this is high angle when we are above the character and the character is somewhat lower than we are. Of course, we need to know the context of this scene, or maybe the story. So here the character is trying to get to climb up the mountain. So the character, like, physically needs to get up the mountain. So he wants to reach a higher position. So this is his motivation. But we are sort of standing up the hill or up this mountain, and we are safe. We just observe this character to getting closer to us if he is successful, if he is okay. But in this case, you can probably sort of feel worried a little bit about the character because he is experiencing this way up the mountain or the hill. But who is dominant in this situation? Well, probably the character looks at somebody else up the mountain. But in this case, so the character is looking at us, and we experience this emotion. He's just climbing. So maybe there is someone standing up the hill, and we are being positioned in this position of another character. Yeah, the character is weaker. Okay. Then we have not so emotional, but well, it can be introduced, some type of emotion. The ground level shot. It can be detail, or so our attention had to be shifted to the ground level. So here it's just detail, but this detail is important. Why? Because it's from the film Black Swan. It's about ballet, and it's about a lot of training involving the feet. We can put it this way. But for example, if you see the character on the ground and you can see the character's vision, what he or she sees at this ground level, so what kind of emotion, so what is the hierarchy happening? For example, in different fight scenes, at some point one of the characters can find him or herself on the ground, like lying on the ground. So how does it make you feel if your favorite beloved character is on the ground? Because that's the lowest ground level that you can hit. Underground as well, but that's a little bit different. Yeah, and we need to pay attention to it as well. Yeah, we need to make our audience feel that it is important, for first of all, because what type of shot it is. How much of body can we see? Is it full shot, medium shot, close up, extreme? Maybe it's just close up. Maybe extreme close up will be the the nail or the toe. Yeah, like the part. So actually you can compare the measurements of 1 foot to face. So yeah, but here you can see part. Oh, close up. And if we're just above something, some object or some environment, and we're sort of like flying over it, so it is the aerial shot. So how do you feel when you look at something, or when you see in a movie some aerial shots? Sometimes they really made from planes, when character, for example, flies on a plane. So which type of emotion do we want our audience to experience or some information to get? And also, which type of short is this one? Yeah, light overview of the whole picture. So from the point of view of the eye level, horizon, and so type of shot, extreme wide shot, because we see a lot of environment, we see the place, we don't see even any people. Okay, so that's what you need to know about all the characteristics of shot that has to be known when you try to describe. So of course we will practice much more, but this is the basics that you need to know, and always connect the technical aspect to the emotional aspect. Emotional aspect is the most important, why you need to use these types of shots. Yeah. So the next thing that we need to discuss with our director of photography, and actually another aspect, technical, very important, is the aspect ratio of the whole picture. Because according to the type of ratio, it also gives us some kind of technical information, but nowadays, since we have like a huge variety of aspect ratios that we can implement in our film, so we can choose. And by choosing the aspect ratio, again, we want our audience to experience some sort of emotions. And the aspect ratio should underline and highlight the visual style and the whole story. At the very beginning, directors and cinematographers, they didn't have quite a choice. So they usually had just the very first one, like 4:3 aspect ratio. Then the aspect ratio started to progress, and then we had 1.66:1, then 1.78:1, which is called 16:9, which is like became the most popular one. Then it became more and more stretchy, and nowadays, so we usually tend to see pictures in aspect ratio of 2.39:1 or even 2.75:1, but it's like really stretchy one. Usually, really, it's better advised to watch in cinemas, or like panoramas, which is like 4:1, but it's some extremes. So usually, if speaking in colors, we usually stay in yellow, green, or orange. So orange is the most preferable now. And I'm going to show you the video how this aspect ratio affects the feelings and emotions. Maybe you haven't really noticed that, but well, that's something to pay attention to.
Hey, what's this? One of Bluto's tricks? I'm in the wrong movie.
What is aspect ratio? In regards to movies, aspect ratio is the proportional relationship between the height and width of the image that you see on screen. But perhaps the more important question is why? Why do some films look like this, while others look like this? Today, most films are presented in either 185:1 or 235:1. These widescreen formats became popular in the 50s. Before then, most films were shot in 137:1, also known as the Academy ratio. Nowadays, filmmakers can pretty much shoot their films in any aspect ratio they want. Some filmmakers choose an aspect ratio based on the time period that their film takes place. Others find an aspect ratio that they love and stick with it. For example, David Fincher shoots exclusively in 2:35:1, which accommodates his sleek cinematography and wide environments. On the other side of that spectrum, Andrea Arnold prefers older, boxier formats to create claustrophobic worlds. The aspect ratio tells you more about a film than you may think. A Ghost Story, for example, is shot in a cramped 1:33:1. This expresses how the main character feels trapped, and we feel the same way. What's really interesting about this particular film is how the corners of the frame are rounded, invoking the nostalgia of an old photograph. This makes the film feel like a memory. The Hateful Eight was shot in the ultra-wide 276:1. Not only does this complement the beauty of the snowy vistas, it also enhances the feelings of paranoia and uneasiness once we get inside the house. A growing trend in filmmaking is the use of multiple aspect ratios throughout a single film. Sometimes this is done to distinguish different time periods. Other times it's due to switching between IMAX and standard cameras. But the most interesting cases are when the change is done to create a feeling. The change can be done in a very obvious and self-aware fashion, like in Xavier Dolan's Mommy, where the character literally stretches the screen. The expansion feels like a breath of fresh air as we break confinement. We feel the same release that the character does. Or the change can be extremely subtle, like in Trey Edward Schultz's It Comes at Night. The film is shot in 2:35:1, with 2:75:1 reserved for nightmare sequences. As the film reaches its dreadful conclusion, the screen slowly and painfully closes in on itself until we reach 3:1, which equates to watching the film through a tiny slit. The transition is so subtle that you probably don't even notice it, but you surely feel it. Reality has now become the nightmare. Though it often goes unnoticed, aspect ratio is a crucial element of visual storytelling.
So, what do you think about aspect ratio? Have you noticed it before? Have you thought of it before? So, do you connect feelings of sort of box aspect ratio to claustrophobic feelings and more stretched aspect ratios to some really wide shots, environmental shots, freedom shots in a way? So while you're thinking, we've went through different aspects of just sort of shot, technical, sizes, emotions connected, but we also can choose not only the size of the frame and like how much we would like to introduce into the frame, but we also can move the camera itself. So not only the characters inside, but the camera itself. And here our camera can be static or fixed, or it can really move with the help of dolly, or we can zoom in and zoom out. We can pan camera, so it means like to move camera from left to right or right to left. We can tilt it from up to down to from down to up. We can whip pan shot or whip tilt shot, so it means that we move camera very quickly from left to right, for example, if it's pan, or from up to down if it's tilt. We can have tracking shot when we follow character. We can have crab shot. It's also one of the tracking shots. Or we can have arc shot, where we can sort of observe character from different sides. So camera can also move. Also, help of what we can move the camera. So we can have camera static when we put it on a tripod or like some sticks. We can slightly move camera with the help of a slider so that you have like some kind of panoramic shots. We can handheld the camera in our hands, and then will have this a little bit dynamic shot. Or we can have a little bit smooth camera with steady cam. So steady tells you how the camera will move. We can have gimbal shot, again, some accessory that can help you to have some movement of camera, but in a way of steady cam, I would say. Then we of course can have cranes for like some big scale productions, or we can have like a budget variant with jeep shot. We can have drone shot from high above, or we can sort of attach or mount camera to some wires and move camera with this help. So it's some more technical aspects to how some frames, some shots, scenes can be shot. And so that you have a little bit more understanding how to connect all of these words. So I'll show you just a little bit of the video.
When we think about memorable camera directions, we may think of those high-up crane shots, or elaborate long takes, or robot arms. But why do we really move the camera? When is a slow push in on a character more effective than a static shot or vice versa? Why would this shot
Shit just got real.
not work for this scene?
She's been murdered. And you think I did it.
Next to directing actors, directing the camera can be one of the most challenging tasks a director takes on. So it's important to know what tools are available to tell your story visually. So let's fill up your toolkit with the most common and not so common ways of directing the camera. Let's start with some of the basic camera movements in any cinematographer's arsenal. First up, the pan. The pan can be a fast-paced whip pan like Paul Thomas Anderson is fond of using. It's the equivalent of quickly turning to see something. It creates a jolt of energy. Conversely, the slow pan gives us time to take in the landscape. Next up, the tilt. You may not realize it, but one of the most effective opening shots in history is the tilt. Tilts often reveal something to us, subtly redirecting our attention. Next up, the zoom. The zoom can be a funny kind of punctuation because of its sudden nature. Our next shot is the dolly. A smooth movement often on a track, which moves the camera through a space, creating a different type of visual experience than the zoom or pan. Vertigo was the first film to ever combine the dolly and zoom at once. This is called the reverse dolly zoom. It's become a favorite of many filmmakers to show a character having an intense internal experience. Next, let's look at the pedestal shot, which moves the camera up and down. Here it's used to reveal the stakes of a scene in Inglourious Basterds. Another impressive three-dimensional move is the crane or boom shot, which might also tilt the camera and use a larger range of motion. The showdown is coming, and Sheriff Will Kane is left alone to protect the town.
Okay, I'll just stop here and I will leave you the link so that you see more camera movements and probably take more notes. So at this very point, so have you ever noticed this type of shots? Have you ever heard, or maybe you used these types of shots and camera movements in your own work? Do you know all of these names? So how we can move the camera and which mechanisms we can employ. Because to have all of this working, we need to have no, I can. So that to have all of this working, it's not only about the director of photography, it's about the whole department of camera and some other people. So the first person to come, like the right hand of director of photography, is camera operator. This person is in charge of all the equipment, of course, as director of photography, but he or she is his or her assistant. So usually director of photography requests a specific camera operator. They can be friends, they can be like colleagues for many years and projects. And this camera operator will then give some recommendations for camera and grip departments. So during the production, after director and director of photography rehearsed what will happen in the scene, so the camera operator and DP, they decide how to position camera, where, which lenses to use. I mean, they of course discuss it with the film director, but still there can be some changes. And from the technical aspect, of course, film director should know about everything, but not all the film directors really understand this, all the accessories and lenses and so on and so forth. So that's the camera operator, to be like an advisor, and of course he or she needs to know everything about the whole equipment, the range of equipments. And during the shootings, operators are responsible for all the aspects of camera operation, so that director of photography would concentrate more on the mood and the atmosphere, and to use all the colors and brushes in terms of artistic visualization, and especially working with light, because actually DPs prefer to work with light more than with this camera accessories, because light gives you much more artistic vision. The next person in the camera department is the first assistant camera, or it's better to say focus puller. It's the person who is in charge of what's in focus in the film, in the frame. So they are responsible for focusing or refocusing the camera lens on actors or special objects within the scene, or within one shot, or like in different shots. They can pull the focus within one shot, so that to switch the focus. So, and this is like an additional person. It's another person. Focus puller has his or her own monitor, which he or she looks into, and so pulls the focus from shot to shot. It's quite a challenging profession, because sometimes it's not really about, it is about the technical aspect, but it's about the feeling of like this fraction of a second when to pull the focus, when to shift it, because nobody tells the focus puller when to pull the focus. So it's about the feeling, it's about, again, being a little bit creative. It's also about a great vision, like eyesight as well. And we can also have the second assistant camera. So this person is in charge of also positioning the moving camera, but is more responsible for loading and unloading film magazines, changing and charging camera batteries, lenses. So this person is not really deciding what to do, but he or she is set what to do, and this is more like, in a way, service, but I don't really want to use the word service, but this person is just doing what has to be done about the camera. So this person can also operate the clapper board, and so fills out some camera sheets, and so is ordering some film stock as well. So works closely, of course, with focus puller as well, and so can supervise some camera trainees. The next person, who is also quite important one, it's the grip. And grip's responsibility is to build and maintain all the equipment that supports cameras. So it's about camera mechanisms that we discussed before, like tripods, dollies, tracks, jibs, cranes. So that's grip's responsibility, how to mount camera on all of these devices, how to make sure that it will work, so the camera will move smoothly or like the special way that it needs to be moved. And sometimes, so this, especially cranes, they can be quite heavy, so grip makes sure that there is enough space or distance to have the camera positioned on the set, for example. And he or she also works closely, of course, with the director of photography, camera operator. So that's like a group of people who try to make sure that the camera will just work the proper way. And also grip sometimes can be responsible for pushing the dolly. So this special track, so that it goes smoothly or with these with the speed required. So it's also grip's responsibility. And then we are going to another characteristic that is quite important, besides the technical framing, size of shots, camera movements. So it's about the artistic and probably the most interesting part for especially cinematographer. It is lighting. So how you light your frame, how you light your set, it's a very creative process. So of course it has some rules, because light has to be natural in a way, so that when the audience looks at the frame, it doesn't really ask questions, so what's the light, so where does it come from, it doesn't really look natural or something. So there shouldn't be any questions about the source of light. But if you know, so some scenes can be shot inside, and there is not so much light coming from example, from a lamp or from a bulb, so there has to be more light coming. But this light should be natural. And so that to make this light natural on the one hand, but on the other hand artistical, and evoking some emotions. So this is the responsibility, the second one, of director of photography. So here in the first slide you see the basic lighting rule. It's called the 3-point lighting setup. It's when you light your character and with 3 main lights: key light, fill light, and backlight. So key light, it means the main source. So if you look at this frame with Emily, so what do you think this key light is coming from? Because key light, it's sort of like, we think that there is some main source of light coming to the character, so that to throw some light on the character so that we can see him or her in the picture. So in these surroundings, what do you think about the main source of the light? So she's sort of sitting in a room. What can be the main source of light in the room, or like which perception you have about this source of light. A front lamp. Well, it can be lamp somewhere. It's warm light. Yeah, well, anyway, it should be a window, because it doesn't feel that the torch would give such amount of light. So light coming from the window, it's the key light, it's the main source light. But if we just have only this one light, then the second part of the face will be in shadow, so it will not be that nicely lit up as in the picture, so it will have shadows, and then the picture will not be okay. So we need to use some magic tricks so that to still see the face but a little bit in the shadow, we use the fill light coming from the other part of the face, and so that not to have like the background to again be in shadow, we need to put some light there. We need to make the whole character to be like 3D character, to be not flat character, so that to see all these shadows, to see the volume of the objects in the place. So different types of light can be used, but this is like a very basic scheme. With other lights, it can be you can use a lot of light, but in the end it will be just very simple. So in the picture you will not really understand or see that there is so much light used to use in this scene, for example. So when we're talking about the light in the frame, so we usually differentiate between soft film lighting. Just some basic terms. Soft light means that there are no shadows, so we try not to focus on shadows and we don't really expect them. So, for example, this one is soft film lighting. This is hard film lighting. So here we have a lot of shadows. And here, of course, you can see how your emotions and how atmosphere and mood of the film changes, or the scene. So if I need more light, if I don't have any shadows, it feels more positive, it feels more open. If I have shadows, something in the dark, or most of the frame in the dark, then it's something about maybe negative or something secret or mysterious, especially with shadows. It's like this one is from Blade Runner, quite mysterious film with a lot of shadows. Also, we need to know about motivated lighting. Motivated lighting is the lighting that is in this description of the script. So when director and director of photography read the script together, so director of photography starts thinking how to light up the set, and if he or she sees that there is a guy with a torch and the train coming, so this is already the light that should be set up during the filming. And if director of photography can use only this motivated lighting, this setup lighting, it's probably the perfect situation for him or for her, because there is no other light coming, so you don't really need to think about the other light, but you need to focus on this light. So this is the outside motivated lighting, and this is how it looks if we shoot somewhere inside. So this is the practical set lighting, when light comes only from the lamps that are used on the set. So they can be positioned anywhere, but still you see that there is not so much light. because they tried to use the light coming from the lights that we actually see in the shot. And one more type of lighting, natural lighting. It's when we don't use any additional light, we use the light coming from natural resources, sources of light, like the sun or the moon. And for example, The Revenant was shot, like most of the film was shot using the natural lighting. So therefore, this film is actually very interesting from the point of view of cinematography, of course, by brilliant Emanuel Lubetsky, because sometimes you cannot really have enough natural light, but you should really move into this direction of having and experience the natural light. And of course, if you compare this shot to the previous one, you see that it feels different. Of course, there is color grading, but still, I mean, with Emanuel Lubetsky, so it's just some kind of painting. And who helps director of photography to light up the set? It's gaffer. He can be called, or she can be called, chief electrician, supervising or chief lighting technician, but this person is responsible for the light setup, light guy. Well, there can be, of course, slang. So this person is in charge of all the electrical work on production, how to install lighting equipment. They work closely with director of photography to visualize the practical look of the film that they try and achieve. So they need to be really experienced people so that to be hired on some big production projects. They can work either on location, even if there is some kind of natural light, but still the gaffer should be present, or of course on a film studio set. And one of the key responsibilities of gaffer is health and safety. I mean, this guy deals with electricity, so you could imagine that well, electricity is something that can be a hazard for the entire crew and all this construction. So this person must understand how to build everything, how to connect everything so that there will be no fire explosions or something like that. Of course, gaffer has assistants. One of these assistants is called best boy. They can be best girl as well, but best boy comes from a theater area, so and it migrated then to film industry. So best boy is assistant to gaffer, his or her right hand, and deals with logistics and paperwork related to electric department or light department. So best boys ensure that equipment is ordered, they arrange the delivery, ensure that everything arrives on time. If something goes wrong, so they are in charge of dealing with different damage or malfunction in equipment, and so this is like a senior lighting role, and it can vary according to the size of production. But of course, for gaffer to have like a right hand, so this is best boy. There is a separate person that is called genie operator or generator operator. This is a specific person who is responsible for generators, that they should produce the needed amount of energy so that to supply all the electric department, all the electricity. So it can happen somewhere on location, like in a desert, in a field, bus boat. So there should be some generator. There has to be some generator so that to produce the energy needed. Engine operators work within the garage department of a lighting company, and in order to gain experience of the vehicles used to transport the generations. So there is a specific person who is responsible for generators, and you should really have one if you are going to have a lot of light equipment as well. And there is some minor position like lighting technician, or they sometimes call this person Sparks. This person is engaged in setting up the lighting equipment before a shoot starts. So they're in charge of light bulbs and other consumable items such as traces, filters. So they oversee these types of works of light department. The responsibilities can differ from different types of productions, but anyway, so they must report anything that goes wrong to the best boy, and again supervise health and safety on the set. And they of course are subordinate to gaffers, and so this is the minor position in light department. So this is all together how director of photography works and who he or she works with. Not only the director, but a lot of other people who are subordinate to him or her, so that to make this visual look of the film the way it was supposed to be. So I already asked you about some famous film directors that you know. You only told me about Roger Deakins, so I'll just throw in some more names that you hopefully heard about. Or so anyway, just for you to consider, one of the greatest Italian cinematographers, Vittorio Storaro. So he has credits in Apocalypse Now, The Last Emperor, Last Tango in Paris, and Dick Tracy. So if you heard the name, just type pluses. Well, I guess you saw Apocalypse Now, but maybe you didn't pay attention that it was work of Vittorio Storaro. Well, actually, Italian cinematographers are of a different kind. They're very expressive, like Italian paintings. Another one, Janusz Kaminski. So here we have even the characteristics of his visual style. So he likes backlighting subjects against the sun, using diffusion, blooming light effect with low contrast. So this is already some style that even director of photographies can have. So his films are Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Minority Report, War Horse. Has 2 Oscars. Hoyten van Hoytema. Maybe you heard of this guy too. So because he worked on Interstellar, Dunkirk, Let the Right One In, Her, but well, I guess Interstellar and Dunkirk are quite epic films, and cinematography is something to really appreciate. He doesn't have any Oscar, but he was nominated for one. Emmanuel Lubezki was already mentioned, so he loves natural light, and so The Revenant, majority of these scenes was shot using natural light. His films are also Children of Men, Gravity, Birdman. He has 3 Oscars. And the king of cinematography, if you still doubt that it is Roger Deakins, it is Roger Deakins. He's also a fan of natural light, subtle camera work and fearless color palettes, but I mean, this is Roger Deakins. 1917, Blade Runner, Skyfall, Hail Caesar, Sicario, and so on and so forth. Maybe you know this whole story between Roger Deakins and Oscar, since he is a cinematographer with quite a huge filmography, but he won only 2 Oscars. And the first, and he's quite a mature guy, I would say, but only recently he got his first Oscar, despite that he is the king of cinematography and everyone knows it. But, well, that's your story with these awards. Everybody knows that you're great, that you're a great artist, that you're a great cinematographer, but you don't have Oscars, so what you should do about it? I guess it doesn't matter, because all the people, I'll just show you a small video while you're listening to me. Do I have it? Oh yeah.
Looks amazing. Everything looks. Dramatize the emotional potential of the screenplay. Blade Runner 2040. Mudbound. Oscar goes to Roger A. Deakins. Blade Runner 2049.
This is the first Oscar and 14th nomination for Roger A. Deakins.
Hey, thank you. I guess I better say something else. They'll give me a jet ski, and I don't see myself on a jet ski.
I just wanted to show you that it was a standing ovation. I guess another Oscar, such a long-awaited Oscar, was for DiCaprio to finally get this Oscar. And you know the story of DiCaprio. Yeah, he got, that's the story between Oscar and some really great either film directors, producers, cinematographers, actors. So it's sometimes very strange relationship between the award and the name and people. So standing ovation, it's a recognition, especially for certain cinematographer, especially for such cinematographer as Roger Deakins. So, what to watch? I have some suggestions about the documentaries about cinematographers like Starara. So there is a very nice documentary about his work. Another person, like a great cinematographer of Ingmar Bergman, Sven Nykvist. So there is a documentary, Light Keeps Me Company, about his work. It's a little bit more about 20th century, but well, Sven Nykvist is also a great cinematographer. And just in general about cinematography, visions of light, the art of cinematography is also something to take a look at. So, but you can also watch some other documentaries about your favorite film directors, or watch some interviews, or there is a recently started podcast called Team Deakins, where they have different interviews with different cinematographers, so pay attention to this podcast. It's called Team Deakins. And our quite long lesson is completed. Thank you very much for being with me all this time. It was a very long and complex topic to cover in one lesson, but I hope that you learned something new and had another vision at cinematography. So if you have questions, so you can type me. And our next lesson will be about art design and visual effects. We will talk about production designer, art department, and visual effects department. Yeah, I know. That was quite long, and I hope that you will have this information with you, think about it, and will look at the films while watching them from a different angle. We'll take attention, we'll pay attention to the shots from technical point of view and artistic. What's rushes? I guess it's to the idea of how quick or slow to pull the focus. Because to rush it's mean to hurry. So what's rush is like not to be in a hurry. So any more questions? Yeah, I guess we will finish. And I will see you next time. Yeah, next time it will be much shorter. Well, but we had to pay tribute to cinematographer. Yeah, I'll see you next time.